The film begins in New York. Our main character's name is Charlie, and he works as a police officer, always trying to help everyone everywhere. It turned out that Charlie loved helping people since childhood. Therefore, when he grew up, he became a beat cop, specializing in solving the difficulties and problems of all city residents. He helped the visually impaired cross the street and assisted women who unexpectedly went into labor during childbirth. He could give part of his modest salary to regular donations to poor neighborhoods and risked his life to apprehend robbers. He loved children and after work taught students to play baseball. Without a doubt, he was a recognized good neighbor. He had countless certificates of honor. His wife was the complete opposite. Not only extremely selfish and demanding, she also openly complained to her beauty salon clients that her husband was inflexible and didn't know how to take bribes to replenish their thin wallet. They lived poorly, but honestly. One day, after another hard shift, Charlie and his partner stopped by a cafe.
And you, officer?
You recommend the lobster thermidor?
In the cafe, Charlie notices an attractive blonde waitress and can't take his eyes off her. Apparently, she liked him too. But the officers didn't have time to eat because they got a call about a crime. Today it's Charlie's turn to pay the bill, but Charlie discovered he doesn't have enough money. Seeing his confusion, the waitress said with irritation that they treat them on the house. But Charlie doesn't agree with this and notices in his wallet.
Lottery ticket?
He notices a lottery ticket in his wallet and suddenly comes up with an idea. Charlie held out the ticket to the waitress and said that if he wins, he'll split the prize in half with her. If not, he'll bring money tomorrow anyway and reimburse her double the cost of lunch. The waitress grinned and agreed. That same evening, Charlie was having fun with his friends who are 14 years old, playing baseball right under his apartment windows. After some time, his wife called him home from the apartment window. He reluctantly went home because his wife constantly nags him there. She yells at him for every little thing.
Oh, Charlie, come on, don't do that next to me, that's disgusting.
And even when it came to the drawing of that very lottery ticket, she started screaming that he mixed up their wedding anniversary dates. But literally a couple of minutes later, she heard the cherished numbers on TV that matched the numbers on the lottery ticket. It turned out they hit the jackpot. His wife screamed joyfully with delight. Even with the deduction of shares from other winners that day, they got a colossal sum, $4 million. This unexpected gift of fate was enough to change their previous poor life. She immediately began imagining how she would buy herself everything she'd long wanted, and even get silicone breasts. However, Charlie's mood was completely different. He remembered his promise made earlier that day. If he wins, he'll share half the prize. At first, he didn't dare tell his wife, but after an internal struggle, he still decided to confess himself. The wife, hearing this, almost went crazy with rage. She knew perfectly well her husband's stubborn character, and understood even better that he would certainly keep his word.
A complete stranger, Charlie!
I owed her a tip.
A tip? $2 million? Come on!
Charlie's wife, whose mood resembled a roller coaster, categorically refused to share $2 million with a stranger. Seeing his dilemma, she used the cover of love to bind him and forced him to lie that he didn't win. At that moment, Charlie was torn. Until the next day, standing in front of the restaurant, he still hesitated whether to follow his conscience or put his wife's feelings first. His colleagues seemed to notice his hesitation and reminded him, he needs to do the right thing, but exactly what's right? He didn't specify. Charlie wrapped $100 in an envelope and with an anxious feeling entered the restaurant. Before he could say anything, the waitress spoke first.
I just wanted to...
I really want to apologize for yesterday. I was so rude. It's just that it was pretty much the worst day of my life from start to finish.
The cafe manager doesn't give her time for long conversations and says she's fined $9 because of an unpaid check earlier and asks her to bring coffee.
Let me.
Charlie gives her a small box with an eyeglass chain inside. It turned out that after graduating from college, waitress Yvonne left for New York with a dream of becoming an actress. But despite several years of trying, she still remained just a modest waitress. Moreover, yesterday her horrible husband not only stole all their savings, but also deliberately maxed out her credit card for $20,000. This left her penniless, so that even filing for divorce became a luxury. Receiving the gift, Yvonne immediately beamed with joy and simultaneously began to gradually lower her guard toward Charlie. Then Charlie again put a fateful choice in her hands. He suggested Yvonne decide for herself. Does she want to receive double the cost of lunch or half the lottery winnings? After all, she just received a gift from him, and Yvonne didn't think that she, so unlucky, could get a winning lottery ticket at all. She chose the lottery winnings, not even suspecting that Charlie had actually won something. After this, she unexpectedly heard that he won $4 million. At first, Yvonne didn't believe it at all, even scolded Charlie for teasing her. Only when he firmly repeated it again, she couldn't contain herself and screamed with joy, celebrating this heavenly blessing. Yvonne not only warmly hugged everyone in the restaurant, but also generously announced that all lunches that day were on her, and she gave each customer a scoop of ice cream, while the restaurant owner hurriedly wrote down every gift, afraid that if he missed anything, the establishment would go bankrupt. Seeing Yvonne so happy, Charlie also felt relieved that he didn't lie. At this moment, his colleague outside also nodded approvingly. In fact, this outcome didn't surprise his colleague at all. He always knew that no matter how Charlie struggled internally, he would ultimately do the right thing. However, later, when his wife found out, she immediately turned into a machine gun, non-stop firing at Charlie. Even on the bus on the way to the prize ceremony, she unceremoniously grumbled incessantly. Fortunately, Charlie had already figured out how to handle the situation. Knowing his wife's vanity, he suggested that she personally announce at the ceremony about giving $2 million to Yvonne. This would show how kind she is, and she'd start getting invited to various shoots. She immediately calculated the possibilities. By sharing the money publicly, she would look generous and kind, which could have an excellent effect on her beauty salon business. Therefore, she readily agreed. On the day of the prize ceremony, Charlie, his wife, and Yvonne appeared on stage. The wife, looking like a good fairy, solemnly handed Yvonne a check for $2 million. This moment immediately went viral on the internet. A powerful wave of public sympathy engulfed all three of them. Since then, the lives of all three changed significantly. That day, the wife had just bought an expensive mink coat when animal rights activists splashed her with red paint. Yvonne acted in a completely opposite spirit. Having received the money, she immediately paid off all the debts her ex-husband made. Soon after, she bought the old restaurant where she used to work, becoming both its owner and employee. As a sign of gratitude to Charlie, she even named a charity table in his honor, specifically to feed the homeless hot meals. She finally found her happiness. She came home and bought her favorite products. She doesn't show off, unlike Charlie's wife. But suddenly the phone rang. It was her ex-husband who learned about his ex-wife's winnings. The ex-husband shamelessly showed up, demanding money, and immediately demanded $500,000. If Yvonne doesn't agree, he'll stubbornly stay in her house and refuse to leave. Since legally they were still husband and wife, Yvonne couldn't call the police. She could only helplessly pack her things and flee from this persistent parasite. Meanwhile, Charlie and his partner got into trouble on duty. During a visit to a Korean store, it turned out they were being robbed. Charlie noticed this immediately but didn't show it. He decides to go around the back and neutralize the robbers. He manages to neutralize two, but still got a bullet in his left shoulder during the scuffle and was subsequently forced to retire early. Major media outlets vied to report, "Brave lottery cop apprehended robbers." Charlie became a city hero overnight. Even the mayor personally presented him with a medal. However, at the awards ceremony, Charlie did something that made his wife's face change color. He announced that he would donate $10,000 to a fund to help families of fallen police officers, to honor the souls of his fallen colleagues. For his wife, who put money above all else, this news was like a bolt from the blue. But she couldn't make Charlie take his words back. Therefore, to prevent money from being wasted, she took on home renovations. Not only that, to thoroughly warn Charlie, she threw out his favorite chair without his permission.
Could have asked me.
Why should I? You're the one that loves to give everything away.
That same evening, his wife again forced Charlie to go to a party on a yacht organized by the lottery company. In the midst of a lively cocktail party, a white-bearded old man eloquently boasted about how much money he made in a year investing in stocks. The wife immediately sensed money and approached him. Listening to the man's key points, she didn't forget to take out paper and pen, diligently taking notes. Feeling no interest in these get-rich-quick schemes, Charlie went out alone on deck, and here he accidentally saw the lady Vaughn in a red dress arguing with a taxi driver. Out of kindness, Charlie got off board to help her settle the conflict. But it was at this moment that the yacht unexpectedly set sail, leaving them both behind. Charlie's wife didn't even notice that her husband wasn't on the ship. Yvonne immediately felt guilty, but Charlie felt unprecedented lightness. He never liked parties to begin with, and his wife, immersed in the life of the rich, would feel even freer without his company. So, the two left behind decided to let everything take its course. They found a restaurant together and enjoyed dinner together. At this moment, a romantic wedding was taking place nearby. The joyful scene touched them both a little. Yvonne said her husband loved her. He not only often gave flowers and took her for walks, but also sometimes invited her to luxurious restaurants. But over time, he turned into a lying scoundrel, and our love and family were destroyed in just 3 years because of one lie after another. Hearing this, Charlie also began to remember his past with his wife. It turns out they knew each other since high school. Both were each other's first love. Thanks to pure and passionate attachment, they got married as soon as they became adults. Suddenly, when music started playing, Yvonne unexpectedly invited Charlie to dance. As they drew closer, an indescribable feeling gradually arose between them. Fortunately, both understood moderation, realizing that for each other, they were only fleeting strangers in life, and that forming a friendship was already incredibly valuable. Moreover, Charlie kept convincing himself, a little more time, and his relationship with his wife would certainly return to what it was before. However, at this very moment, his wife was still engrossed in lively conversation, as if blinded by the illusion of money. Even when the ship docked and Charlie came to meet her, she still didn't forget to give the white-bearded old man a charming smile. Since Charlie agreed the night before to take a walk with Yvonne, the next morning, they both went to the nearest square to roller skate. At first, Charlie was doing so-so. On the slope, he rode straight into the lake. This moment made Yvonne burst out laughing. Then both kind-hearted people went together to the subway station, where they offered citizens free rides. Although it was only a small, insignificant sum, it was like spring rain, soothing the fatigue in people's hearts. In the following days, they also did many other good deeds. For example, they rented an entire baseball field, inviting neighborhood children, friends, and relatives to spend a peaceful weekend. And this act inadvertently planted a seed of dreams and hope for children from low-income families who had few opportunities to experience the joy of sports. However, on the day when Charlie joyfully brought the neighborhood children back to the entrance, he discovered that his things were thrown out by his wife. It turns out their previous charity event in the subway with Yvonne was published in the newspaper. The wife saw this and immediately declared that there are feelings between them. No matter how Charlie explained, she didn't listen, didn't believe, didn't accept. To vent her anger, she even humiliated him. Faced with such blatant slander from the person he loved, Charlie didn't object or respond because he knew who he was and knew he couldn't change. His wife understood this too. Therefore, she herself, decisively and first, proposed divorce. At the same time, Yvonne came home and found her ex-husband walking around the apartment in just a towel. She found herself deeply entangled in problems with her ex-husband. Learning that Yvonne received $2 million, her ex-husband, mired in debt, shamelessly showed up demanding money and immediately demanded $500,000. If Yvonne doesn't agree, he'll stubbornly stay in her house and refuse to leave. Since legally they were still husband and wife, Yvonne couldn't call the police. She could only helplessly pack her things and flee from this persistent parasite. Checking into the most expensive Plaza Hotel, Yvonne accidentally met Charlie, who was also staying there. The feelings they both suppressed for so long could no longer be hidden. A bright love flared up. Unfortunately, after one sweet night, the next morning they were surrounded by journalists at the hotel entrance. It turned out that the hotel staff recognized them the day before, and the news that they stayed together spread. Since neither of them was officially divorced yet, they immediately became cheating lovers. The wife, seeing the news, immediately came up with a plan to use public opinion to play a scheme. When signing the divorce agreement, she first demanded sole ownership of all prize money. Considering the years of marriage, Charlie easily agreed. But the wife's greed went further. She also demanded that Yvonne return the received $2 million, threatening to sue in case of refusal. Charlie felt his wife had gone too far and angrily stepped forward, grabbing her hand in the heat of the argument. Unexpectedly, this backfired on him. He was falsely accused of assault. Since the situation couldn't be settled, both eventually ended up in court. At the trial, Charlie's lawyer seized on a key point. The lottery numbers were chosen exclusively by Charlie, not by the wedding anniversary date as the wife instructed. Consequently, the prize money rightfully belongs to Charlie. However, he too naively underestimated his wife's ability to make up stories. The wife directly stated that their wedding date was indeed the 27th. But the night before Charlie bought the lottery ticket, her deceased father appeared to me in a dream. He said that their wedding anniversary date should actually be the 26th. And I always follow my father's words, so from that moment, the anniversary date she talks about is the 26th. Although this explanation sounded completely absurd, under the guidance of sensation-loving media, it turned into a touching story, almost like a heavenly revelation. Thus, public opinion began to lean toward the wife's side. Then the wife's lawyer used the opportunity to raise the topic of Charlie's allegedly violent behavior, pushing society and the judge to assume, didn't her husband threaten her, forcing her to publicly express a desire to share $2 million with Yvonne, who from the very beginning was considered a homewrecker? In fact, if Yvonne had simply denied her relationship with Charlie, she might not have lost this trial, but she couldn't and wouldn't lie, because she truly fell in love with the smart, kind, and generous Charlie. And so, after many days of interrogation, the wife won public sympathy. Charlie became a marriage traitor, and Yvonne, a homewrecker and extremely greedy girl. The verdict was obvious. Since the case attracted wide attention from the very beginning, as soon as the trial ended, reporters crowded outside. Yvonne could only hastily leave the scene under pressure of public opinion. No matter how much Charlie called her, she didn't look back, didn't want to hear harsh words from journalists. And Charlie wouldn't allow anyone to tarnish Yvonne's sincere feelings for him. The lottery girl, once famous, now found herself at the center of a scandal. And Charlie, for the first time, felt the coldness and indifference of this city. A wave of public opinion tried to completely swallow them both. Worried about Yvonne, Charlie often came to her house in the middle of the night, but never found her. That day, Charlie returned disappointed. After sitting in a daze in the subway for a long time, he felt he should go to that familiar restaurant. When he pushed the door and entered, he saw Yvonne sitting quietly in the moonlight. Not having seen her for several days, Charlie missed Yvonne very much. But Yvonne's heart was full of guilt. She thought, if not for her appearance, Charlie could have lived a happy and fulfilling life with his wife and those $4 million. However, in Charlie's eyes, these miserable $4 million couldn't compare to his feelings for Yvonne. Yvonne had never been loved so strongly before, and had never been chosen so firmly before. Therefore, learning about Charlie's true feelings, she also firmly decided to continue this relationship. Not only that, they decided to leave the city and move to an unfamiliar place to start a new life. But then a knock on the door interrupted their dreams. At the threshold stood a homeless person, asking for warm food as before. Charlie and Yvonne, seeing this, without hesitation, invited him in. Having fed him hot food, they embraced and stepped aside. Meanwhile, the homeless person took advantage of the moment and pulled out a camera, capturing this touching scene. It turned out that disguised as a homeless person was a famous reporter with 10 years of experience who had been watching them throughout the film. He disguised himself to find truly touching stories from the perspective of ordinary marginalized people. And Charlie and Yvonne, finding themselves in the storm of public opinion, pushed almost to the edge, still maintained ardent love and kindness. Can this not be called true attachment and love in this world? Although the verdict couldn't be changed, the reporter's truthful article restored the good name of Charlie and Yvonne. Moreover, spreading to all corners of the city, this article touched the hearts of every citizen. However, Charlie and Yvonne knew nothing about this. Just as they were about to say goodbye to the city and visit that memorable restaurant one last time, they unexpectedly found the restaurant full of letters. In each envelope lay a small sum of money. It turned out that the city's residents, at the reporter's call, voluntarily created a tip fund for Charlie and Yvonne, because everyone believed a warm city shouldn't allow kind people to feel cold. Therefore, over the next 3 days, envelopes with donations came in continuously. In the end, after counting, the total amount of donations reached an astonishing $600,000. Yvonne used this money to buy back her restaurant, and Charlie returned to work at his native police station. His ex-wife married the white-bearded old man from the yacht. Unfortunately, he turned out to be a fraudster. Soon he took all her property and disappeared without a trace. The ex-wife, finding herself in a hopeless situation, was forced to swallow her pride and get a job at a nail salon. Finally, in the very center of the city, a romantic wedding hot air balloon smoothly rose into the sky. Charlie and Yvonne held hands and gently scattered invitations, like flower petals, to all corners of the city. These invitations easily intertwined in the air, like bright ribbons whirling in a festive dance. And this scene not only captured the magnificent moment of their love, but also turned their story into a classic love song.